Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and this is going to be a brief little review for Kokoro Connect, episodes 12 to 17. Now, building up to this, we had the first 5 episodes which were really focused on body swapping, and I really felt that there was lessons to be learned from this. This was all at the hands of Heartseed, this sort of disembodied voice. We don't know, even at the end of the series, is he an alien? Is he some sort of ghost? Is he like the ghost of Christmas Future or something like that from Scrooge? And I don't really know. I mean, by the end of this, we really have no clue still. But I think the motivations behind what he's been doing to these main 5 characters, Taichi, Yui, Inaba, Iori, and Aoki, I think the point is, teaching them lessons, making them mature, making them grow up, and learn these lessons that they seem to be sort of not on the path toward learning themselves in any case. They just sort of relate to each other in this little club room that they have, and they don't really seem to be on a path to make any forward progression as yet. And I think it's Heartseed's way of coming down and kind of sort of playing with them, if you will, to ease up his own boredom, as he says, and bringing that across. I mean, I think in those first 5 episodes, we really see them being taught the lesson of sort of teamwork, teamwork in spite of embarrassment, learning to accept each other for who they are and confiding in each other, learning to trust each other. And when you get to episodes 6 through 10, this seems to go even further because the body swapping thing stops, and then we have a sort of emotions unleashed to the extreme kind of thing going on, where in primal moments you see them lash out. You see them uncontrollably acting on impulse, whatever that impulse happens to be, whether it's a sexual desire or a frustration or fear. It just seems to get tantamount to the point where they can't deal with it. And we do see them very tested, in a sense, in that trust that they've learned to accrue with each other in those first 5 episodes, because now they're having to deal with each other in this sort of pain, this extremity that they're being forced to endure. But of course, this group, this just exceptional group of people, they have become friends. They have become trustworthy of each other, and they endure it, and they not only endure it, but they beat it. They kind of get through it. Now, when you reach episodes 11 through 13, which is where I left off with my last review of the series, I've done the first 5 in a first series review, and then I did a second series review, which was episodes 6 through 11. And so going on from where I left off, going into episode 11, you had this new Heartseed show up and basically introduce a whole new factor into this thing. It wasn't any more body swapping. It wasn't any more emotions unleashed and brought to boil. Now he was playing around with a sense of de-aging. We didn't know anything about this other Heartseed, whether he was legitimately a second Heartseed or not, I don't know. Of course, I related my own being familiar with the Q continuum from Star Trek The Next Generation and how familiar to that this all felt. And there are some lines of dialogue as we pick up through these latest 4 episodes where we get the hint that Heartseed is saying, his people, his kind, whoever they are, whatever they are, is kind of taking an interest in what he's doing to these 5 characters. And again, that's very Q-like. So I'm wondering if that was some sort of inspiration for the writer of this series. Who knows? It's basically left to guess. But essentially, you have them being forced to deal with the past and bring those sort of former memories that may have gone by the wayside in their youth, bring them forward and deal with them in the present. Now we see Yui needs to deal with her fears of being assaulted as a younger girl and face up to the fact that she was pretty tough. She went into karate, she had been in tournaments, and an old friend of hers comes calling and saying, you promised me something. She has no recollection of this until she experiences some of this de-aging, and then finally she realizes, oh yeah, I was supposed to fight her in a tournament. We were going to be friends and that kind of thing. And that's kind of where it's left by the end of her learning her side of the lesson. Now you have Aoki, who's head over heels in love with her, being de-aged, and remembering that he had actually loved this other girl who basically looked exactly like Yui. And so there's a lot of sort of drama that forms between them, because Yui is now not sure, is he liking me or is he liking the image of this girl he used to love? And it's down to Aoki needing to use this memory. He goes and visits this girl and says, you know what, I once loved you, but I now love this new girl. And he has to face Yui in the same manner. And we see her break down because this is the prompting she needs to reclaim her own courage. And at the same time, it's Aoki getting to that point where he has faced his own dilemma. And he's finally got the answer. I love Yui. Now, the third character that really seems to benefit from this de-aging is Iori herself. We see that she has some really bad home life going on where basically she has a stepfather who's very abusive. He's made a return to her life very recently, and it seems like her mother is sort of bending over backwards to keep him in their lives. Now, essentially, she has to learn the courage to ask her friends for help because she has always put on a facade, always tried to deal with things herself, and it's always blown up in her face. So we do see her basically go home with her friends and confront her mother, and they have this nice conversation where the mother basically says, I was only letting him stay around for your benefit. I thought that would be something you'd want. And Iori basically says the same thing. I only wanted to deal with this as long as you wanted to. So they very awesomely come to this understanding and send this stepfather packing, and it's just really awesome to see. But of course, not before a very interesting moment with Heartseed coming back and offering Iori the chance to go back into her past and sort of reclaim her life from an earlier point, because she seems to have these regrets. She seems to have this side of herself that feels like she could have done things differently, which would have led to them being better. And even though she puts on this sort of facade, we don't know it's a facade at the point where the series took a break after episode 13, but essentially we find out it is a facade that she says, I don't really have regrets. I am who I am because of who I was then, and I don't want to change that. But of course, she has the most realistic sort of reaction to this whole thing when we begin episode 14. She is in terror about what Heartseed has been doing to them. And by the way, I know that in episodes 14 through 17, for some reason they're calling Heartseed Balloon Vine now. I don't know where that name came from, but I refuse to use it. Even if it is the original name of the character, I'm going with Heartseed because that's what makes sense to me. But in any case, she is terrified about all of the stuff that Heartseed has been doing. Now, we have this group of 5 characters. They've all been making their best efforts in dealing with this, but except for very early on, and not even for that long, none of them have really questioned this. How long is this going to continue? Why is this happening? Who is Heartseed? What is the point of all this? I mean, this is a big question as a viewer I have. And you have Iori just losing it. She's losing her sense of self. It's getting to that point where it's gone to the extreme because she can't keep up the facade anymore. She doesn't know at any moment when this guy's going to crop up again, whatever this entity Heartseed is, and just ruin everything that she's tried to build up for herself yet again. And so we do see that when she said, I don't want to change who I was in the past, there is some truth to it, but it's also a matter of she still has this facade. She's still putting on facades to deal with her friends, and that part of herself is something she needs to grow beyond. She needs to be herself. That's a large chunk of what these last 4 episodes are exploring. Now, of course, we do get some other things with other characters. Basically, this is all set against the backdrop of this upcoming tournament where they're going to have to put on a presentation to keep their moderator/teacher, Go Sensei, because he's basically been moonlighting between the jazz club and their club. Now, he doesn't come around that often to their club, and their thought is, we have to keep this guy our moderator. If any other teacher gets involved, it could become highly dangerous if Heartseed shows up again, because how are we going to keep all of this hidden? With Go Sensei not coming every day and basically checking up on us, we'll be better off. So it's very interesting, too, I have to note, being a fan of Kids on the Slope, the anime series. You have a jazz band, you have a character, albeit a female one, called Kaoru, and I wonder if this is some kind of conscious homage to Kids on the Slope, being that the main male character was Kaoru, and he was in a jazz band, and that whole series had to do with jazz, but I digress. Essentially, one of the things that I found really interesting was there are points when Heartseed visits Aoki and Yui singularly. He basically tells them, I don't have any interest in you anymore. You're really not doing anything for me. You're kind of boring, You're no longer useful to me. And I think this all goes back to my theory that this is about him teaching them lessons in life, making them face their fears, making them reach certain levels of progression. And when it comes to Aoki and Yui, he's basically telling them, you've gone as far as I can take you. Now it's time for you to live your lives. Of course, at that point, we still have Inaba, Iori, and Taichi, who are all dealing with their sort of little trifecta, this love triangle, if you will, because since Iori has just gone darker than she usually is, it's come into question, what is the cause of this? Of course, you have Taichi thinking it's because she turned him down and she feels remorseful over that. And then you have Inaba losing it at some point, telling her to wake up and get back to how she usually is. And there's conflict there because this Iori has been brought to that breaking point where she can no longer wear masks and be who everyone expects her to be. And there's that large question that overhangs the whole situation. How do you think you know me? What version of me do you think is the real me? And everything gets to reach a point where this girl, Kaoru, that basically she has a crush on one of these band members in this jazz club. It turns out this cat wants to ask Iori out, and she turns him down in a very cold manner. Now, this Kaoru girl basically sees Iori becoming an enemy. She starts spreading rumors about her, starts bad-mouthing her. Things get to the point where they've escalated so much that their room ends up trashed. All of the hard work they've made for their presentation ends up completely destroyed. And basically, Inaba stumbles across the 3 perpetrators who were asked to do it by this girl, Kaoru, who has the crush on the jazz band member. And so everything comes to just an insane culmination where essentially Inaba gets kidnapped. And because they can hear each other's thoughts at this point, that whole stretch of this arc has to do with them hearing their emotional outbursts inside, their internal thoughts at random moments. She calls out for help. And so, of course, you have Taichi, Yui, and Aoki hightailing it to save Inaba, going to this warehouse that they've heard her voice emanating from. And as this is unfolding, you have Iori locked in her room at home, feeling that crisis of self. She's basically begging herself, who should I be? If I am the Iori everyone knew me to be, this light, bubbly girl, I would be proactive. I would be running to save Inaba with my friends. But if I were a monster, if I weren't like that, I would do nothing. And because she's laying in bed, sort of wallowing, trying to find herself, she asks herself, am I a monster for not doing anything? And you see this reach a culmination where she just puts her foot down. She realizes, I think the lesson that was picked for her by Heartseed, that she needs to stop wearing facades. She needs to stop being worried about what seems to be normal to other people, what basically other people will think of her. She needs to do things for herself, not become selfish, not become self-centered, but have the confidence to do the things she would like to do, whether that's something for her friends, something for herself. She needs that confidence to stop worrying about what others think. And this is something that is very prevalent as, you're in your teenage years, but even as an adult, there's still a level of wearing facades. And sometimes as an adult, you can kind of find ways to use those things in more beneficial means. But for this girl, for Iori, this is just killing her to live this way anymore. So she reaches that pinnacle, and it's such a robust moment when she sort of comes in and intervenes when basically the other 3 have taken out the guys temporarily, and one of them holds a knife to Inaba's neck very unexpectedly. And Iori comes in, and she's all suave and smooth, and she says, you know what? The enemy of my enemy is my friend. And she basically uses this moment. She's begging and pleading. Heartseed, let that message out at the exact moment she needs to, and she says, save Inaba. At the exact moment, everyone lunges at the guy with the knife, takes him out, and then you have this really sort of cool cooling down of the entire series. Once that pinnacle has been reached, you have some surprises coming, because essentially you see Iori smack this girl for what she has done. They basically have become a rivalry, but in that moment, Iori realizes this girl is doing exactly what I might have done. We're basically very the same in that we're trying to sort of be one with our peers, even if that means going against who we want to be. And so she relates to that, and they become fast friends, which I think is very tremendous, because as all the characters say, Iori is an amazing lady. She basically shows herself to be an amazing character because she does befriend this girl. Now, of course, you have one last moment where the guy with the knife basically chases them down, knocks Taichi over the head, and I was not expecting this. I was basically beginning to think somebody could die of these main characters by the end of the series. You had Iori just reaching a very dark place, and I thought, is it possible she could take her life? Or failing that, as we saw, basically she ended up having a more positive ending when Taichi is attacked. I thought, oh great, they killed him off, the one who has been the most steadfast in trying to help everyone else. I didn't want that to happen, and of course it didn't. What did happen, though, was a sort of mind mind link, a final mind link, if you will, between Taichi and Iori, and they basically processed those false romantic feelings they thought they had for each other. Now, of course, yes, they still love each other as friends, but that sort of romantic sense that Iori thought she felt for him, she realized was just one of those many facades she had become used to wearing. And so when he finally wakes up, he wakes up to Inaba, who's sitting bedside. She's just ecstatic he's okay, and he asks her out. And it's just a really sweet, cool, funny moment where basically she's like reluctant to say yes, but then all of her thoughts and emotions shoot out at him. You know, she's so excited about it, and then she just sort of says yes. And toward the end of the series, I mean, you had all of these different little aspects sort of finally coming to a close. You have Iori, as I said, befriending this girl who was temporarily an enemy. You have their sort of class leader chick with the glasses, whose name I can never remember, basically saying, you know, this was all a result of her own doing, basically getting everyone prompted to be where they needed to be as everything came to a close. You have them putting on their little demonstration and basically finding out that their teacher guy, you know, he can basically do both classes. He doesn't need to pick one or the other, which totally ticked them all off. But very awesomely, you have Yui and Aoki getting closer and closer together as he has to do some makeup tests, because this whole demonstration made him not be able to study and, you know, get ready for the upcoming tests. And very cool, you have Taichi and Inaba being an official dating couple by the end of the series. And it all just felt like a really great way to wrap up and sort of tie into a nice, neat little bow this entire story. Now, of course, I do have the remaining question: what was the whole purpose of Heartseeds doing all of this? Is it what I thought that it was, that he needed to teach them lessons and needed to prompt them toward these lessons in their lives to live more fruitfully, that kind of thing? I don't know. I guess that's kind of left for you, the viewer, you know, at the end to decide what you think it was all about. But it did seem that they made a lot of forward progression throughout the course of this series, and by the end of it, it just seems like they're much better off for it. So there is also that remaining question: is the manga still unfolding? I think I heard that somewhere, and will we someday maybe see a series 2 or what? I don't know. Maybe OAVs, who knows? But essentially, this was just a great, phenomenal series. I wish it had all been aired at once instead of having this long break before these last 4 episodes. Essentially, I really did love it, though, and I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below what you thought of Kokoro Connect. It was an interesting series, it was an emotional series, and it's one that I'm glad that I was able to experience. So I'd love to hear from you guys, and otherwise, that's going to be pretty much it for me on this one, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.